The baby began crying before the plane even finished boarding. Not a soft whimper, not a tired fuss. It was the kind of cry that came from deep inside a tiny chest, sharp, shaking, relentless. Heads turned. Sighs followed. At seat 34B, near the back of the economy cabin, Daniel Carter tightened his grip around his daughter and lowered his eyes to the floor. "I know, Lily," he whispered, rocking her gently. "I know, sweetheart." Daniel wore a faded grey janitor's uniform, the name Carter stitched crookedly above the pocket. His shoes were scuffed. His hands were rough, stained faintly with cleaning chemicals no soap ever fully removed. Everything about him screamed tired. And he was. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. Lily was only 8 months old, and this was her first flight. Daniel's first too. He hated everything about it. The noise, the tight seats, the looks, especially the looks. A woman across the aisle pressed her lips together and shook her head. A businessman 2 rows up muttered, "Unbelievable!" Daniel felt his face burn. "I'm sorry," he said, though no one had spoken directly to him yet. "I'm really sorry." Lily cried harder. He bounced her gently, then faster. He checked her bottle, still warm, changed her diaper right before boarding, sang to her softly, his voice barely louder than the hum of the engines. Nothing worked. The flight attendant appeared, her smile professional but strained. "Sir, could you try walking her in the aisle for a moment? Some passengers are complaining." Yes, of course," Daniel said immediately, already standing. He rocked Lily back and forth in the narrow aisle, careful not to bump anyone. She screamed louder, tiny face red, fists clenched. "I know, baby," he murmured, throat tight. "Daddy's here." What Lily didn't know, what no one on the plane knew, was that Daniel was holding on by a thread. 7 months ago, his wife Emily had died unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm. One moment she was laughing in the kitchen, the next she was gone. Just like that, Daniel had gone from husband to widower, from partner to single father, overnight. Bills piled up, sleep disappeared, grief settled into his bones. The janitor job was all he could get. Night shifts, low pay, no benefits. When the building he worked at cut staff, Daniel was first to go. Then came the call from an old co-worker in another state. A cleaning supervisor position, slightly better pay, day hours, on-site daycare nearby. But it meant flying, and Daniel had almost said no. Almost. Now here he was, swaying in an airplane aisle, while strangers judged him for something he couldn't control. A man in a crisp suit leaned out from his seat. "Can you keep it down?" he snapped. "Some of us have work to do." "I'm trying," Daniel said quietly. The man scoffed and turned. Lily's cries echoed off the cabin walls, bouncing back at Daniel, until it felt like they were inside his head. "Away." "You're failing her," a voice whispered. Daniel returned to his seat, shoulders slumped. He sat down carefully, cradling Lily, tears burning behind his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said again, to the passengers, to Lily, to Emily's memory. "I didn't mean to be a problem." A few rows ahead in first class, Rear Admiral Thomas Hale sat silently. He'd noticed the crying the moment it started, but unlike others, he hadn't felt irritation. He felt recognition. Hale had commanded ships, led thousands of sailors, stood calm under missile drills and stormy seas, but nothing had ever tested him like the nights his own children cried while he was preparing for deployment. He turned slightly, watching the man in the janitor's uniform, the way he apologized too much, the way he held the baby like she was fragile glass, the way his eyes kept scanning the cabin, bracing for the next complaint. That wasn't carelessness. That was desperation. The flight attendant walked past Hale, rubbing her temple. "Long flight," Hale said gently. She sighed. "Tell me about it, that baby." "She's not the problem," Hale replied calmly. The attendant paused, surprised. Hale looked back again. The baby cried, the father whispered, the world judged. Something tightened in the Admiral's chest. He remembered standing on a tarmac years ago, holding his infant son for 5 minutes before shipping out for 6 months. Remembered how helpless he felt, how guilty. He remembered thinking, if only someone would help instead of stare. The seatbelt sign chimed off. Hale unbuckled. The plane cruised steadily through the clouds, unaware that in its narrow aisle a quiet moment was approaching, one that would change everything. Daniel wiped his eyes quickly, hoping no one noticed. Lily's cries softened for a second, then surged again. "I'm here," he whispered. "Daddy's not going anywhere." Up front, the Navy Admiral stood and began walking down the aisle. End of part 1. The moment the Navy Admiral stepped into the aisle, a ripple of whispers moved through the cabin, like a sudden change in air pressure. "Is that— No way. That's a Navy Admiral." Rear Admiral Thomas Hale walked with calm, measured steps, the kind that came from decades of command. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable. People instinctively pulled their legs in, clearing his path. At seat 34B, Daniel noticed the shadow first. He looked up and his heart dropped. "Oh no," he thought, "I've caused trouble. They've complained to someone important." Daniel hurriedly stood, adjusting Lily against his shoulder. Her crying had reached a raw, broken pitch now, the sound of exhaustion layered over fear. "I'm sorry, sir," Daniel, before the Admiral could speak. "I know she's loud. I'll take her to the back, or I can stand near the restroom. I promise I'm trying." The Admiral raised a hand. "Sit down, son." The firmness in his voice wasn't anger. It was authority, steady, controlled. Daniel froze for half a second, then slowly sat. Lily's cries echoed again. The Admiral leaned slightly closer, his voice softening. "How old is she?" 8 months, Daniel replied, confused. "Her name's Lily." "A good name," Hale said. "My mother's name was Lily." That alone felt unexpected. The Admiral glanced around the cabin, meeting the eyes of nearby passengers, some curious, some defensive, some embarrassed. Then he looked back at Daniel. "You mind if I help?" Daniel blinked. "Help?" Hale slipped off his jacket, carefully folding it over his arm. He loosened his tie, then extended his hands slowly. "May I hold her?" For a moment, Daniel couldn't breathe. You want to hold my baby?" The Admiral nodded once. "If you'll allow it." The cabin had gone completely silent now. Even Lily's crying paused for half a heartbeat, as if she sensed the shift. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct in him screamed to protect his daughter, but something in the Admiral's eyes stopped him. Not pity, not curiosity. Understanding. "Yes," Daniel said finally, his voice shaking. "Yes, sir." He gently transferred Lily into the Admiral's arms. Hale adjusted his grip with practiced ease, resting Lily's head against his shoulder, one hand supporting her back, the other lightly cupping her tiny legs. He didn't bounce her, didn't rush. He simply stood there. Then he began to hum. It was low and steady, a deep, soothing sound that vibrated through his chest. Not a song anyone on the plane recognized, just a simple melody, slow and repetitive like waves rolling against a ship's hull. Within seconds, Lily's cries softened, her fists unclenched, her breathing slowed. People leaned forward in disbelief. After less than a minute, Lily let out a small sigh and went completely still, fast asleep against the Admiral's shoulder. A quiet gasp rippled through the cabin. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was reverent. Daniel stared, eyes wide, hands trembling at his sides. Tears blurred his vision. I don't understand," he whispered. Hale smiled faintly. "Babies can feel when someone isn't afraid of their storm." He turned slightly, still holding Lily, and addressed the nearby passengers, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable command. "This young man isn't a disturbance," he said. "He's a father doing his best under difficult circumstances, and that deserves respect, not judgment." No one spoke. The man in the suit who had complained earlier looked down at his tray table. The woman who had shaken her head wiped her eyes. After a moment, Hale gently handed Lily back to Daniel, careful not to wake her. Daniel took her as if she were made of glass. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. I don't know how to repay you." Hale reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple white card. He slipped it into Daniel's hand discreetly. "Don't repay me," he said quietly. "Just take care of her." Daniel glanced at the card. It had a name, a rank, a phone number, and beneath it, handwritten in blue ink, "Call if you need help." The Admiral nodded once and returned to his seat. The flight continued in peaceful silence. Lily slept the rest of the way. When the plane landed, passengers stood and gathered their bags, but something had changed. People smiled at Daniel now. One woman whispered, "She's beautiful." Another offered to help with his carry-on. As Daniel stepped into the terminal, a uniformed officer approached. "Mr. Carter." Daniel stiffened. "Yes?" "Rear Admiral Hale asked me to escort you." Panic flickered, but only for a second. The officer led Daniel to a quiet seating area near the gate. A few minutes later, Admiral Hale arrived. "I meant what I wrote," Hale said. "Tell me your situation." Daniel hesitated, then told him everything. Emily, the nights alone, the job loss, the reason for the flight. Hale listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, Hale nodded slowly. "I can't bring your wife back," he said, "but I can make sure her child is taken care of." Within days, things moved faster than Daniel thought possible. The new job became permanent with benefits. On base, housing assistance was approved, childcare support arranged, and a letter of recommendation from a Navy Admiral opened doors Daniel didn't even know existed. Months later, Daniel stood in a small, sunlit apartment, Lily giggling in his arms. On the wall hung a framed photo, a baby sleeping peacefully on a Navy Admiral's shoulder. Beneath it, a simple caption, "Kindness is the highest rank." The end.